was actually back in May, and it might have even been before then. Or no, I guess I published it in June. Anyways, and I had this amazing idea that I suddenly got to from like absolutely nowhere. I didn't mean to get to this, but I did. And basically, I got to this. I've always had this idea, and it's something that I read from a article that summarized this philosophy guy, Teilhard de Chardin, who said that like the meaning, like as we kind of approach the singularity, we'll like get to this point where like, or eventually the universe, if it collapses in and there's a big crunch and it collapses in into another big bang or whatever, that before it does and before we're all like sucked into an event horizon, we'll be living in a universe where like the physical conditions lend themselves to some like to a situation such that like the computational capacity of the universe approaches infinite. As it collapses into one point, like it can be the collapse can kind of be controlled so that you can um, basically take the computational capacity to infinity, and or like the article was based on Chardin's work, and so it made that statement. It's a very interesting article, and I remember reading it, and I came home and I told people, I was like, "Oh my god, I figured out the meaning for life. The meaning of life," and like nobody understood what I was talking about. And I tried to explain, and they like didn't understand. But I mean, I guess the meaning of life would just be like under that frame of reference would be to increase the computational capacity of the universe and make sure that that thing could come about. But basically, like as the computational capacity of the universe increases to infinite, like as we're being sucked into a big crunch, we can extend we can create a simulation um, of a like virtual universe or infinite virtual universes within our own, and then we can extend those into infinity and preserve our own consciousnesses, even though um, our universe is like collapsing in on itself. So anyway, like our meaning of life under that like frame would be to, or in that context would be to like make sure that situation can come about. But that situation is a little bit hard to bring about because you have to like first of all it assumes that there's gonna be a big crunch, and there might not be a big crunch. There might be a big freeze where galaxies drift off into infinity. And if that's the case, that's kind of a bummer. But if it's not the case, then eventually, all the matter in the universe will be sucked into itself. But like rearranging the matter in the universe such that it can be used for computational purposes or whatever is very expensive, in terms of energy. So I have this article on consciousness, and this article consciousness as a continuum, life, the cosmos, and you. I was going for like an article title that like kind of would remind me of one of those like inspirational posters from like high school or something, or maybe it would be like on the front of like some like religion's like pamphlet or religion. I don't know. Anyway, so this article talks about how there could be like this like pre-existing quantum network throughout the universe and it already exists. So like we can like piece together uh, all the space in the universe into like a quantum computer without ever even having to go there. And so that means that we can tap into that infinite computational capacity without having to actually expend all the energy that would be required to bring that matter into one place. And then the speed of light won't be that big of a deal, which is pretty cool. But this article, which is it's called Consciousness Crystallization, Ground Control to Doctor Strange, is about how Okay, so I was thinking about this whole concept. It wasn't for this article, but where we have our physical universe that hosts a virtual universe or many virtual universes below it. And I was thinking about like how okay, like looks like it could be like turtles all the way down. We can keep going down into virtual universes. But then I had like the idea, and it's just like what if you can actually go back up? Like you can you can you can just assume that our own universe is the virtualization of another universe. And then I realized like, oh my god, it really is like this turtle's all the way down, but then this turtle's all the way back up too. And then my and then that was kind of like okay, you know, it was kind of mind blowing in itself. But then I was like, oh my god, why is this linear? Like what? Why is it just up and down? Why is like oh my god, it's like turtles everywhere. And then I was thinking like, oh my god, there's like these all these like networks of like virtual universes, and then all these different ways that you can. And it's not so much of like the multiverse is not like a real thing even. Um, like everyone thinks of dimensionality in like they have this like they take on this like multiverse like viewpoint like that there's this like there's an infinite number of multiverses and that they account for like dimensions 4, 5, and 6 or whatever, and that like and see that's really easy for people to conceptualize, and it's kind of interesting to conceptualize things that way. Uh, that there might be like these like spatial dimensions like length, width, and height, and then there's time, but that there would also be like arrays of like like similar universes where like all different possibilities have happened. Okay, and that's like kind of interesting, but I don't think that's really how it is, uh, because it doesn't really make sense. Like you're taking like the length, width, and height, and then like kind of like trying to think of the higher dimensions in the same manner as that, and so you have like an array of universes for dimension 4, and you could think of that as time, and then like and then some people would try to think of an array of universes in like the length dimension or whatever, or in the fifth dimension as like another dimension on top of time. But it's not like time is really like the zero dimension. It's not the fourth dimension. It's only the fourth dimension because we think of it like fourth. We think of the things that we can see, and then oh yeah, there's time. But time is actually the most important thing, and so it should be first, not length, width, or height. But anyway, so I think that whole like kind of multiverse viewpoint is wrong, and I think a metaverse viewpoint makes a lot more sense. And basically, we've got this like trying to figure out how I can explain all of these ideas. So it's I need to explain this more. And so we're going to face like a hot end or a cold end. That's kind of like the Big Bang versus, or the Big Crunch versus the Big Freeze. It really just depends on whether or not the universe is expanding or collapsing. If it's collapsing, the lifetime of the universe is probably cyclical by nature. And I don't know how I go directly into this. I think this is where I was thinking about like how it's like turtles all the way down. So, but what if like this is not actually like what if the physical universe doesn't matter as much as we think it does? Let me just get into some of the implications and conclusions of this so that you can understand why it's so interesting. Because right now it's like, okay, I don't really understand what you're saying, and um, it doesn't really sound that different. And what is this consciousness crystallization stuff? Like, that sounds crazy. Never heard of anything like that. But so I had all those ideas, and then I had some more ideas because I smoked weed the other day, and that's something that I should never do because I start thinking a lot, and that's why the government hates me, is because I think too much, and it's really kind of irritating. But they don't like me because I think too hard sometimes. And the part they really don't like is that I tell people what I think about, and then it makes them think really hard. And the stuff I think about and the stuff I talk about is so drastically different than like what everyone hears. Like so different on like usually you've got like people on the left and you got people on the right and then you got the crazy people all the way over there. But the crazy people all the way over there, they're really just like counterbalancing the establishment's like kind of story. So they're just like, if there's anyone that's like kind of crazy and like doesn't buy the establishment shit, they'll just go talk to those crazy people over there. And that's why the crazy people over there exist, is because they're kind of a trap. Like you go talk to the crazy people, you're like, oh my god, like JFK's faked the moon landing. It's like, wait a second, JFK was dead by that time. But like you start like talking about all these conspiracy theories, and it doesn't make any sense, and then you kind of get branded as a conspiracy theory guy. Like, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that's over there. I'm the guy that's talking about things that no one in the world talks about, like, period, because he actually thought about things and didn't immediately seek out, well, actually, I did immediately seek out the crazy people, but, anyways, the truth is not, you're not going to find the truth on the internet. You're really not. Like, I've scoured the internet for years, and I've never found much of anything. And the stuff that I find is like usually just like it overlaps with the truth in enough ways that it just makes me think that there's so much stuff out there that is just it's intended as a trap to to identify people who are talking about crazy things. Kind of like by talking about those things, you like identify yourself as like someone who doesn't like believe what you're supposed to believe in the world. Anyway, so we're going to turn inwards towards inner space to conquer inner space, and we kind of like run out of things to learn about in nature and science, and then but we'll never run out of things to learn about within ourselves and within our own culture. And I kind of talk about like the structure of the metaverse, and then how like you can kind of like, so if your consciousness exists in one universe in the metaverse, and you extend your consciousness to a virtual universe below yours, and a virtual universe could include like, I mean, video games are kind of a virtual universe, but if you actually directly connect your consciousness into a video game that's running on like a quantum computer, how can you actually separate that from something that happens in the real world? Because it's like a system, it's like a virtualized system, it's like a virtualized reality that is like directly connected in some ways and shares information systems with the real world. But then, like, and then I need to like tie in forked consciousness. But so like, if the metaverse has like a tree-like structure, and you can, and I don't think it has like a pure like tree-like structure. I think it has like a graph-like structure, and it can actually be organized to be viewed in different ways, a lot of different ways. But this would mean that you could like spread your consciousness to different virtual worlds, and if you can fork your consciousness, and what is consciousness anyways? But if you can fork it, then you can send like different like versions of yourself to different worlds, and then so Uh, and so, and then there's this other thing that I was thinking about, and it's this interesting idea. So, if a person like I don't know, I was watching this like anime show called ReZero, and like in the first two episodes, like this guy, or first 2 or 3 episodes, this guy, like the main character, goes through these scenarios, and he's trying to like find this girl and help her and save her, but he keeps dying, and he keeps being reset to his like starting point. Um, but it's very interesting because the girl always managed, like he can depend on the girl that he's trying to save, and who is also trying to save him in a way. You can always depend on her to like make the same statements and make the same actions, even under like slightly different circumstances. And so what that would mean is like, say like I just instantiated like a million different virtual universes under our own physical universe, and they're all pretty much the same except for just a few different things. Like, but then I kind of like fork some person's consciousness and like deploy them into a simulation within all of those different universes, virtual universes. Like, how are they going to like react to slightly different situations? Then I would like fork our consciousness and send it, or and kind of like deploy it into all of those situations simultaneously. And so what I'm saying about like a crystallized consciousness is like it would be like the same entity across all of those different universes. So for I don't really know how to like describe it or define it really. I don't feel like so great right now. Sometimes I feel good, sometimes I don't. Don't really feel so hot. Anyway, the point is, like, so a crystal is like something that is like replicated across dimensions in a repetitive fashion. So, and there's like gravity crystals, which actually aren't really possible. I don't think because like a gravity crystal is basically like a set of like a million planets in a grid, and they're all like running through the same cyclical motions. But the thing about gravity is that it actually propagates like deformations in space at the speed of light. And so if you're not actually in an infinite space, then the objects you're talking about, there's an edge to the body of objects that you're talking about. So obviously there's a difference in how the propagations in space are deformed, or in how space deforms. And also like not only that, but like it has to be an infinite uh, grid of like planets or objects in space in like all directions, um, and it would have to be some kind of like actual crystalline structure. So it's kind of like a theoretical thing that exists for some models of gravity, but it doesn't actually work. And there's like I don't know, in my head, like I read an article, and the article was pretty convincing looking. It was from like a somebody wrote it who knows a lot about physics, and this guy wrote an article about it saying that it would work, but then in my head I'm like, that doesn't actually work because it breaks down, I think. But, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So I can't like actually specify exactly. I mean, I can like try to describe why I would think it doesn't work, and it wouldn't work because it has to be infinite. It can't have an edge. They can't have an edge and maintain the gravity crystal like forever. I think gravity crystals would be like a good good lead into this. Ah. That describes, like, that's actually where I'm getting this idea from, is because I started thinking, like, I started looking into like Wikipedia pages on crystals and started thinking of crystals in different ways instead of as like, you know, a shiny little rock that you pick up and like admire for the, you know, natural beauty of things that are shiny. Uh, so basically, like, a crystal is like a repetitive structure. So like the structure would be kind of like your, like, the information in your consciousness or in your mind that is like spread across different worlds, and like the state. So there's like the structure of your mind, and then there's like the state of your mind, and it could be spread across different like virtualized worlds and stuff. And so a consciousness crystal would be like a state that you can achieve where like you are like, I don't know, like you are like constant across all these different worlds in some way, and it can be defined in different ways. Like you can like look at the same consciousness across different virtual universes and then decide that uh, it is crystalline with respect to some dimensions, but not with respect to other dimensions. But that a most crystallized consciousness would be like, it would be constant across all, constant and like one with everything across all dimensions, or not across all universes, across all possible like worlds. And so what I think is that there's like this like tree-like or graph-like structure of universes that is connected together, and that like not only can we create virtualized universes below us, so you can create like a video game where you can play a video game inside the video game. And so you could probably do that, like, it really depends on how much information and how much computational capacity is in our own universe. But I think the answer is actually more surprising than we would think. Because we would think that it would require, like, eventually that you would get to a point where you couldn't descend into universes below a certain depth because the top level universe would run out of computational capacity. But what if that's not true, or what if it's actually the opposite for some reason? And like you can extend universes, like virtualized universes everywhere, because like reality is like broken in its like ability to create information representations. So like you don't actually need that much matter to create an information representation that is like very dense and requires a low amount of energy and or like matter. Energy efficiency with respect to information representation. Well, because you see things like, oh, well, you know, this is how much matters in the universe, so this is how much like information the universe can represent. Like these are the number of atoms in the universe, and these are the number. But that's actually not the hard limit. The hard limit is not how many atoms can hold an electron, and then the amount of information that you can represent would be like, if you use that model, then the amount of information that you could represent would be limited to the number of like electrons that you can apply or remove from an atom, and then like it would just basically be related to the number of atoms in the universe. But what if like you could create like systems that maintain information in different ways, so that like you could have a system of atoms and like its position in space is like represents some part of that information. At that point, then like you have to be able to divide space into like all these like I don't know. You have to we can represent a ton of information in our own universe, and probably enough information to represent like I, I don't know. We could probably represent our own universe itself like completely with less information than it would take to um, with less information than our own universe can represent in a virtual universe. Which means that I'm kind of correct about like the inversion there. Like you can virtualize universes. Um, but can we virtualize universes that can store more information than it would take to represent them? And I think yes, actually. I'm pretty sure, like, in fact, that is like, that's not even a limit. Anyway, so the whole point is like if one's consciousness can be mapped to universes descending from ours, and if our universe projects those with mappings in itself, then could those values in our consciousness maps, could those values our consciousness maps to there be mapped back in this universe without additional info? So what? This is more of a draft than anything, but it's like I can't think right now. I've got like this feeling of brain fog, and it's really annoying. And it just like it'll come and go and come and go, and it always has to do with something that I eat. It's like I eat something and I feel good, or I feel bad, and I almost like I get to the point where I can't even have a conversation. It's so weird. I can't even like like, and it's always something like, oh, like I don't know. I swear to God, like I get drugged like all the time, like almost all the time, which makes no sense. Like it's just basically the equivalent of saying that there's these little like gnomes that come in at night and they put like antipsychotics in my food or something. That doesn't make any sense. Because you would think you would see one of those gnomes do that at one point, but I don't see anyone do anything, and so it makes me think that I'm really paranoid. But anyway, it doesn't make any sense because my mind is either able to like function like ridiculously well or like not at all. Because the stuff that I talk about in here, especially when I like connect this with math, I actually get to a point where I connect it back to this other thing I've been thinking about. And so like it blew my mind when I went from here, from Teilhard to Chardin and like the singularity and like extending our own universe into a virtualized universe. And so when as the universe is crunching into one like one singularity, like we can extend our own universe into a virtualization that lasts or where time runs infinitely faster than our own universe. So we can extend that virtualization into eternity, and live forever, even though our own universe is like collapsing. Anyway, so that blew my mind. That was a long time ago, right? But this whole like the turtles all the way down and turtles all the way up, that blew my mind also. Like just about just as much as this did, this Tyler Chardon thing. Um, but I would assume that like because there's turtles all the way down, we can go all the way down and go back up, and so we might be able to access these higher universes or higher planes from within our own universe. And so it'd be like our own universe is like virtualized, and there's these higher worlds that we can access. And there's all these different ways of thinking about it. And this is what I'm saying. Like I'm really smart, but then for some reason, like sometimes my brain just gets like pummeled into submission. I can't even explain it. Uh, Sometimes I feel really good. Sometimes I feel really bad. And I don't mean I actually emotionally feel bad. I just feel like my brain doesn't actually work. It's weird, and it's happening right now. Anyway, so this kind of idea that we can like travel between these universes and like virtualizations and stuff is pretty new to me. I haven't really heard of anything like it, but then I realized it's very similar to like the Doctor Strange thing, and it's like a oh god, there's like so many ideas in here that are like really difficult to like explain. Some of them are pretty beautiful in terms of like thinking about like for example like thinking of like CPUs as like a physical manifestation as like the laws of logic within our own. It's like a physical manifestation of the metaphysical within our own physical universe. Um, and it like if for some reason the metaphysical laws were to change, then like that would dictate what like a CPU would, what the optimal design for a CPU would be. But of course, anyway, so I started thinking about like, and then I got to this point where like the turtles all the way down, all the way up thing, like the Doctor Strange thing, that was really interesting. That blew my mind. And then this whole like metaverse like consciousness crystallization thing blew my mind. But then these two things like together led to like some insights that just like I can't even comprehend like the like implications of them, because if this stuff is true for some reason, and basically it's true if it has to be true if there like certain things about quantum mechanics and quantum networking are true. Like they would just actually have to be true. Um, and that's why I would like to learn about that stuff and like actually learn it. Like, see, I can't even talk right now. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. I feel horrible. I feel like somebody switched out my medication. I'm like not taking Adderall. I'm taking antipsychotics or something. I don't even know it. So weird. Anyways, I'm gonna like stop talking about how cool it is and actually explain it. Like I can't even read right now. It's like my brain is literally like turned off. I mean, I can read. I'm just like not connecting with the words that are on the screen. Just very strange. And then I tell people about this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, David, that's right. You're crazy." Yep, it's just the fact that you're crazy, and you need to go and have your brain lobotomized and like basically electrically fried into submission, and then you'll be okay. Wait a second. So these like consciousness crystallizations or whatever can like, so if you make yourself like the same across all these possible worlds with respect to some definition of sameness, because you can crystallize in like different dimensions and stuff, and you can have different kinds of dimensions. But if you do that, does that mean that something special happens, or that you've achieved some special state? Because you can actually define enlightenment as like maybe like crystallization of your consciousness across like all the dimensions, or across like all the, I don't know, across like all the worlds in the metaverse or whatever, such that it meets some definition, and then that would like satisfy like some definition of enlightenment or something. Um, and then I had this like little piece of paper, this little like note, one of these like dangerous like notes or whatever that I post, and like people like want to like have me killed because I like said something. I can't even talk. It's horrible. So I actually wrote this down a long time ago, probably like February, or I don't know. But so if we like, we might be able to think of our soul as like a map to the universal collective unconsciousness, and the universal like collective consciousness. And so we could like view our soul as just kind of like a map to like from the things that exist in our minds to the things that exist in some like universal mind. Um, and our soul is kind of like, I think maybe like that map, or like maybe other people's understanding of what that map would be after we die. Um, and I really think that that's kind of what the soul is. I mean, you could define the soul in different ways, or maybe you could call it something else. Maybe you don't call it the soul, but to me, that's what the soul is like how other people perceive you and how they perceive the things that are in your mind, and like, and then you have your own understanding of what is in your mind, but after you die, that kind of goes away. But if other people understand what you believed and like keep pushing it forwards, then then your soul kind of like continues living on, even though your body is your body's gone. But this is an interesting way to think about it. Is like to think about the soul anyway as like a map to the universal collective like consciousness and unconsciousness. So, and what does that say to like those souls who contribute like more unique nodes to the universal collective unconsciousness? This is really talking about like, yeah, for like, specifically for human culture and knowledge. Like, are that like, what does that say about someone if they contributed more new content or more novel content? And then that's also a little bit depressing to think about in the context of the singularity, and to think that we're going to get to a point where like nobody can really invent anything new, which is kind of a pain in the ass. So it's especially true if yeah, it's interesting if the achievement of like perfect enlightenment or whatever could be taken to mean obtaining some perfect uniform mapping, to like melding like one's mind into some like perfect mapping or something, or melding your mind to some kind of like perfect structure, or some structure which is thought to be perfect. And this is actually at odds with another definition of enlightenment that I posted up here, which just says that enlightenment would be like some consciousness crystallization where everything is the same in all different worlds, instead of like enlightenment meaning your mind is as close as possible to some like perfect ideal. So that would mean that I don't know, it's hard to explain. So like, if I tried to like start over and explain all of these ideas and write them down like right now, I couldn't actually do it. I wouldn't be able to, like, if I had a blank screen in front of me and somebody was like, almost everything that you wrote in that draft, that pre-write, write it again but don't reference it. I wouldn't be able to like explain any of it. But then for some reason there's these like 30-minute like bursts of inspiration that just like where I write all this stuff down, and this is like 2,000 words or whatever, and I'll just have like an inspiration, and I'll almost be writing stuff or stuff will be like coming into my mind so fast that I can't actually type fast enough to like get it down. And it's really irritating, and it like streams into my brain almost in such a way that's like it's not accessible afterwards, unless I happen to remember that I wrote it down and I read it. Now I have a memory that I read it, or I thought about it and I made sure that I formed a memory in my brain, and now I can reference the memory in my brain or whatever. But it's as if like this stuff outside my mind is like streamed into my mind, and really it's just that I forget, I guess. I forget about that inspiration, like the inspirational content. But it's as if like I have this burst of inspiration, and I'm thinking about all these like amazing things, and I'm enjoying how amazing they are. And this has happened for like 12 or 13 years basically. I just did never start writing anything down until just recently. And it's as if like after I'm done thinking about it, I'll be just as amazed at thinking about something else that I don't ever actually remember a lot of these specific ideas that I think about. And actually, I think that's one of the things that kind of allowed me to like slip under the radar. And like, I don't know, I didn't have any blogs or anything that people could use to identify that I would know certain things. And so like nobody knew how much esoteric content and stuff that I actually knew, because I didn't try to write about it. I specifically tried to not tell anybody about it, because I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. But then somebody like put me in a corner and like started like fucking with my life, and so I had no choice but to like stand up for myself. Oh yeah, and another thing that blew my mind, I was thinking about like these virtualizations and how they can be viewed with like tree-like structures and stuff, and then I was like, oh my god, that's like a program. Like, if I extend my own physical universe with a virtual world, and in that virtual world you can do anything you want, and you can play any like Game Boy game that you want, then there's this like set of information that is available to my mind in this world, and then there's a set of information that's available to my mind in the virtualized world, say it's like Oculus Rift or something, right? And instead of like having an interface, I've just like directly loaded my consciousness into that Oculus Rift like virtual world, or maybe not. For this point, it doesn't really matter. But basically, if there's a set of information in the physical world that my mind can access and that exists in the physical world, and then there's a set of information that exists in the virtual world that is encoded in the physical world, but it's available as though it is real or whatever in the virtual world. And then if you're playing a Game Boy game inside of that virtual world, now there's another like set of information that is like nested further in, that is not as directly accessible from the physical world, from the top level of physical world, as it is from the virtual world. So, and then I realized like, okay, like you've got all these like these things are like closures. It's like defining like there's a set of defined information that you can access. And so there's some information that like, and if you could think about like any kind of virtual world that's possible, there would be like things that are possible in virtual worlds that are not at all relevant in the worlds that host those virtual worlds. Or there might be things that are relevant in some virtual world that doesn't even make any sense in another context, or whatever. So like there's so many questions with all this stuff, but basically like that means that crystallization traversing a metaverse resembles like closure in scope. So crystallization across like branches of virtualized universes can resemble like closures from math and programming, and that is that information that is chained down into nested virtualized universes is similar to scope. But this information can be embedded by consciousness or some other aspect of that branch or grouping of universes. So programs could operate across these things, moving state from various closures to the other. And that means that you could like have like a program or something that is like a consciousness from another like universe in the metaverse that like replicates information across different places and like acts like a distributed program across these like virtual worlds. Which is actually very similar to how like a program would work on the internet. Like there's information distributed. Like if you would view a server as a virtual world or something, then you would have like information being replicated from one like in one format to another format from like one server to another server, and like uh, it that's almost exactly what I'm talking about. And so yeah, but then so that like but then so that blew my mind again. Like my mind got blown like 10 times, like maybe like a dozen times, like in the course. Like I mean, my mind got blown to the point where like it inverted my like view of reality. Like it completely like especially just like the premise of this whole article, which is that there are like it might that basically it's turtles all the way down and all the way up too, and that there might be like some things that are like just like pure magic that exists that we don't even know about, and that there might be this little like I don't even know, like there might be like a like kind of like a Narnia world that we can like enter or escape to that is like different from our own world, or the, like all the Doctor Strange stuff that might actually be possible. I don't know how it would actually be possible. I think if it was possible, like people would probably have figured it out by now. So maybe it's just something that's like interesting to think about. It's kind of like philosophy of like virtual worlds or something. But so and then I started like comparing it to crystalline. Well, I started comparing this idea of like crystallized consciousness with the idea of probabilistic programming. Uh, for genomics, and like in genomics and metanomics, there's this idea, or I have this idea of like a kind of a new programming paradigm that's based on probabilistic programming, except it's not really based on probabilistic programming because that's a thing, and I've looked at it and it's not very similar. But anyway, the idea is that you have, for genomics anyways, that you have like spatially distributed state, and so like your state is like the presence or absence and the positions of these like protein products of genetic behavior and these chemicals and these like neurotransmitters and stuff like that. And so like when you increase the levels of those drugs or those chemicals that are in the brain, or if they might be in the nucleus of a cell or something, then you change the behavior of the system. And that using like something that's like similar to ergodics from like math, you can like actually define these like state machines with like in reality, like they're like state machines like defined in reality, like using like physical like chemical systems. So anyway, I mean it's amazing. This is ridiculous how this works. Anyway, so I compared that with this, because that idea also meshes with the idea of having like crystallized consciousnesses and like shared state across like different universes and stuff, and like I don't know. It's just like an interesting path to go down. Anyway, so I blew my mind like a dozen times up to about this point, and then I started thinking about math, and I shouldn't have thought about it, but I did. And I started thinking about like, okay, so if you have to like fork, or if you have a consciousness that's been like forked across like virtual worlds, and it needs to share state across worlds that might have like that might be like coherent and similar, or might be like completely uncoherent and dissimilar, like in terms of like the experiences and the rules and the laws of those virtual worlds. So if your mind has to like share information across like disparate like across like virtual worlds that have like disparate types of experiences that are like just completely different, then basically you have um, then you have to also not only share the information and data across those worlds, but then also share the structure of that data and information about the structure of the data. And then so I started thinking about like the what that structure might look like, and then I decided that there must be some minimal kernel of the structure of that information itself, and then and it might be similar to infinite recurring self-similar identity maps between like groupings or something. It's kind of an idea from abstract algebra that there would be like this like kernel of stuff that maps to like another like kernel, and it like provides like identity for like the structure of information or something. And then so this kernel of knowledge must always exist in every universe. Okay, yeah, and then that's the other thing I decided was that like that there must be some like perfectly like minimal like some like apex of the structured information, and it would have to be something that's like cyclical, but can be defined as like cyclical with like, and then it's like defined as a loop, so that it can be like so that you can like see it as a loop, and you don't have to like keep following that, you know, and that's like something that's used for like programming and compilers. Like you see that your code is entering a loop, and so you know that like its state and its variables, like while it's in the loop, like none of these variables will be modified because they're not part of the closure of that loop, and you can like make these like assumptions like that can help you for optimizing code or optimizing like compiled code or whatever for a just-in-time compiler. Um, but anyway, so this kernel of knowledge must always exist in every universe. It must always have the same form, and it must like cyclically refer to itself with recursion. And so that kernel must be accessible regardless of whether it's for the universe or some instantiation of consciousness in that universe. So it exists without without being connected to the thing that's like experiencing the things that are dependent on it. So it exists whether or not something like whether or not something is like looking at something that requires that concept. The concept still exists. So it's like, you know, if a tree falls over in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, what happens? I mean, well, in this case, the tree makes a sound. And basically, that kernel must be accessible regardless of whether it's for the universe or for some instantiation of consciousness in that universe that is like experiencing something that is dependent on it. And of course, all things are kind of dependent on this like kernel of the structure of information, anyways. But that's why this thing is like so very important. Whatever this thing is very important. And I think they're like then I started getting into math, and I started thinking like, okay, well, I've been doing this like continuous division thing with or continued fractions thing with phi, and I've noticed that phi with is very similar actually to this. And I will display why that is, or show why that is. Ah, crap. So, continued fractions. The So you can see like this definition of phi, right? And again, it's this like cyclical definition of phi, but then it also applies to continued square roots, which is really interesting that it would I think, yeah. I mean it's like practically the same thing as this. These two things are like almost equivalent. Because instead of the only thing that's changing is you've got this function, multiplication or division, whatever you want to call it, in a continued form, is being changed out for what is the square root, which is basically the it's basically the same thing. You substituted like multiplication or division with the exponent, really. And then so I started thinking about like, okay, well, like, what if instead of square roots that was cube roots or fourth roots or anything that can go down. And this isn't really that important, but this is interesting. And like, can some of these roots have like multiple solutions? And then if they did have multiple solutions, then like how would like the imaginary numbers stuff fit in there? Anyway, but this is interesting because like that definition, the continued fraction definition is God damn it. Yes, I would like the Chrome, please. Can I have the, okay, thank you. I hate computers. I really do. I really fucking hate computers. I can't stand them. Anyway, the point is, you can have, okay, yeah, the point is, like, what if you can take, instead of having, like, some function, like square root, or some function like division, and defining phi from that, what if you defined it using group theory, and you could just, and then basically like this, I'm trying to go to Chrome, but of course, like, it's already open on another desktop and it doesn't allow me to jump to it. So what if instead of using the division, the continuous fractions, or whatever, you use just like some continuous definition of groups, and then phi itself is really like something that is like special, because it's from, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can tie that definition to this thing, this like minimal like kernel of the structure of information that I'm like talking about. I'm pretty sure you can tie those two things together. And not only that, I'm pretty sure this like definition of phi is like ridiculously important for so many things, and that you can, I don't know. I've got so many questions. I wish I could just like go to like Stanford or whatever and like ask people questions about this stuff, because I would probably find out that I was wrong about a lot of it. And I would probably find out that I wasn't wrong about a lot of it. I just wasn't asking the right questions, or that I didn't know the right things, and then someone else had already thought about it and they solved it, and it's not even that, it's not really an open question. But the thing is, like, the people in my life would love for me to never actually progress, and so if I'm asking a dumb question, they would love for me to continue asking, like, loudly asking dumb questions, because then it makes me look dumb, right? Like, don't ever like help me out, or like allow me to learn anything, because then like it becomes easier for these people to like write me off, basically. It's really annoying, because I think I've like proven that like I could really contribute to society in so many different ways, and I'm basically not allowed to. And I'm tired of it. I'm really pissed off. I feel like I've been screwed with. I feel like I basically got, I feel like they did something to my brain. I don't know what it is. But all I know is that apparently I was thinking things that you're not supposed to think. And I learned things you're not supposed to learn. And I didn't know it. And the reason I didn't know it is because I'm actually not that smart. I'm incredibly intelligent. I'm like sadly unable to do much with my life, but I'm incredibly intelligent. And yeah, so I could do a lot with my life, but I'm basically not allowed to at this point. So I just kind of wanted to briefly talk about this, even though I probably would rather re-record something. This is probably horrible. I have so many questions though. And I'm like pretty much gonna be erased. I'm gonna be like erased from reality. And it's so stupid. And it doesn't make any sense. Like nothing I do matters. And that's why that's why I try harder. Just to just because like I already know what they're gonna try to do. So it makes it kind of funny for me to try harder because like some little like 30-year-old NEET is like running circles around the federal government, and it's at this point it's kind of funny because they like I knew how they thought of me and I knew what they were gonna try to do to me, so I knew what would work for them. I knew what kind of like traps they would buy into because I knew what they believed about me. I also knew that it wasn't true. That doesn't really make much sense, but whatever. And I still can't explain what happened to me, but anyway, this thing itself must exist somewhere, and really have to like reorganize all this information. I would just prefer for it not like I know how to like protect all my information. I'm just gonna like eventually use something like image magic or something to generate images, and then like basically distort those images. So I'll basically like render my text into images using image magic, and then distort those images, and then also use like ASCII to Unicode ciphers, which is basically just like a substitution cipher that is like actually not meant to be like unwound. It's just like a logographic or whatever substitution cipher. So like and it's not even really a cipher. It's just basically taking letters that look similar and then replacing them, and then removing certain like punctuation marks and removing like capital letters and lowercase letters and just making everything a single case, so that the information can be compressed without being too easily recognized in any way, and then it'll be written using so it'll be like change the text will be changed out with that substitution method from like ASCII to like logographically similar Unicode characters, and then I can use image magic to turn it into images, and then distribute it across the internet, and then there's no way, and then use like take the images and then like morph them using like some kind of like distortion or something, and also use like morphology operators on them, just like random morphology operators to like slightly distort the image, and then also like mesh the image text against like backgrounds like waterfalls and stuff like that, or like just objects, like so that like image recognition algorithms will like think it's a picture of an object, but it's really like a picture of an object with text on it. And so you can't ever like really be caught with the data on your drive. See, like I know how to do all this stuff, and then people don't understand like what is about to happen, and like they're gonna like we've built this like wonderful like Library of Alexandria type thing, and they don't understand what's about to like happen, and that all of this is gonna like be taken away. And the people in charge don't actually understand that like there's no way to actually do that as long as people know the right things, which is why it's so important to keep people busy. Because if you like if you kept people busy in like the 20 or 30 years between the time that AOL became popular and the time that like the system grows into one that it is one that's similar to what we have now and then collapses. Like if you keep people busy during those like 3 or so decades, then they probably won't see it coming. They won't know how to like cope with it after that's gone. That's why it's really important to like back up data and then like actually back it up in a way that like doesn't like depend on servers on the internet. It doesn't depend on like communication infrastructure. It doesn't rely on like certain technology that could be destroyed by like beta particles. Uh, in other words, destroyed by electromagnetic pulse. Like CDs can be destroyed by electromagnetic pulse. Anything that would be destroyed if you like put it in a microwave will be destroyed by electromagnetic pulse. And you can't really do much about EMP except for because it's just like it's basically like a blast of electrons that randomly activates circuits in like random directions. So that just typically fries electronics. And yeah, I'm on. Anyway, so there could be like types of beings that inhabit this metaverse, and they could either like arise from a virtual world from within somewhere in the metaverse, or they could like inhabit like the metaverse itself and be dependent on like the structure of the metaverse itself. So, the process of like typing this up, I kind of blew my mind like 12 times. When I first wrote everything on here, like I separated it from the article that I was working on because I wasn't sure if I should actually publish it because I was like pretty sure that it's like that powerful. So, anyways, I gotta like, actually write things. I'm gonna log off now, but thanks for tolerating my madness. Apparently, I can't even speak right now or carry on a conversation, but I don't know why. Peace.